Good morning. Welcome to Black Maternal Health Week. This is the second program in a series of 3, and this one is called Empowering Self-Care Strategies for Wellness Online. My name is Chandra Jackson, and I'm the adult librarian for the Engagement and Outreach Department with Los Angeles Public Library. And along with March of Dimes, Los Angeles Public Library is providing programming, books, and community resources to uplift Black mothers and their families during Black Maternal Health Week. Resources, books, and program information can be seen on our website at lapl.org/maternal-and-family-health. If you have any questions during today's program, please share them in the chat and we'll answer them as we can or at the program's end. Don't forget to join us for our final program on Monday, April 19th at 2 p.m. And that program will be titled Amplify Black Birthing Experiences, a conversation with Kimberly Seals-Allers and Masha Riki Kudumu. And without further delay, I will introduce you to facilitator and library partner, Masha Riki Kudumu, Director of Maternal Infant Health at March of Dimes. Masha Riki will introduce Nakeya Fields, the LCSW and trauma-informed specialist, and will talk more about Black Maternal Health Week. Thank you for joining us today and enjoy the program.
Thank you, Chandra, and thank you to the LA Public Library for your partnership during Black Maternal Health Week. And so many of you might wonder, why are we having Black Maternal Health Week and why are we collaborating with the library? If you don't know, we're in the midst of a dire maternal and infant health crisis in the US. The US is one of the most dangerous places to give birth in the developed world. Rates of preterm birth, which is one of the leading causes of infant death, as well as maternal mortality, are increasing. Data from the March of Dimes shows that the preterm birth rate has risen for the 5th straight year in a row, and not only the US, California, but also LA County. Furthermore, approximately 700 women die each year in the US as a result of pregnancy complications, and the majority of these deaths are preventable. There are unacceptable disparities in birth outcomes between Black women and babies and their white peers. In LA County, Black babies are 2 to 3 times more likely to die before their first birthday than babies of other races. In LA County, Black women have a preterm birth rate that's over 50% higher than white women. In LA County, Black women are 4 times more likely to die of a pregnancy-related complication than women of other races. And what we know is education, insurance coverage, and health behaviors like smoking don't explain the gap between white moms and Black moms. Black women with college degrees have higher rates of preterm birth, low birth weight, and infant death than white women who did not complete high school. Chronic inequities, racism, and unequal access to quality healthcare is the root causes of these health disparities and gaps. And so Black Maternal Health Week was founded 4 years ago by the Black Mama Matters Alliance. It takes place every year in April between April 11th and April 17th, and is a week of awareness, activism, community building to amplify community-driven solutions, research, and care solutions with a focus on maternal health, birth, and reproductive justice in the US. And so along with March of Dimes, as LA County Public Library, LA Public Library is providing programming, books, and resources to uplift Black families. And we know that when we shed light on these experiences, when we uplift community-driven solutions, we're going to increase and decrease birth disparities among Black women. When we work together to improve health outcomes for Black women and our most vulnerable neighbors, we improve health outcomes for all moms and their children. So we are so excited to be here today to be part of this programming and to also to share some of these self-care tips. So COVID-19 has exacerbated these health disparities, and it's been a trying year for all of us. And I don't know about you, but I could really use an hour of self-care and tips to improve my wellness. And so we are excited to be here today and to have this program with LA Public Library, as well as the LA AIM San Gabriel Valley Action Team. And so Ms. Nakeya is a mental health entrepreneur, yoga instructor, author, and speaker. She's alumna of the University of Southern California, USC, and received a BA in communications, as well as a master's degree in social work. She has over 12 years of experience in developing and running mental health related community focused programming. She's the founder and chair of the board for the Therapeutic Play Foundation, a nonprofit that seeks to build a healthier, more resilient world for those in under-resourced communities. Nakeya acts as a program development and staff consultant to develop progressive health and wellness programs that incorporate creative modalities within educational, corporate, and community-driven solutions. Welcome, Nakeya.
Oh, thank you so much, Masha Riki, for such a great introduction. It's always so nice to see you. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Empowering Self-Care Strategies for Wellness. She just gave you an introduction about who I am, and I'm so happy to be in the room and sharing energy with you all. It's important for us to take care and take time for ourselves every single day. And this is you making the choice to love on yourself. So welcome to the room. Welcome to the choice. As you were listening to Masha Riki, I'm sure you heard all the statistics and data around Black mamas and babies and how toxic stress is essentially killing us and harming us, and it's impacting our children's development as well. A part of the introduction didn't include that I also am an early childhood development specialist, and that's the reason why I'm so interested in maternal health, because the health of the mother greatly impacts the health of the children and their ability to access their education. And if the mother is not feeling her best self even before she gets pregnant, for example, Black women are experiencing toxic stress at extreme levels because we get our stress not only from our own lived experience as Black women, unprotected in our medical systems, in our larger public systems, in our criminal justice systems, but we also see a lot of evidence, of our Black sons being at risk, and that creates toxic stress within our bodies. And it's important for us to be aware that even before we conceive, that we're already combating the whole idea that we need to decrease the stress that's happening in our body because it's doing stuff to our bodies. Mental health disorders in pregnancy and in postpartum period for the mother adversely affects each member of the family. When the mom's not happy, she's the one generally making decisions, taking kids to medical appointments and sort of moving through with the family. And if the mother gets stuck, whether it's in a depressive symptom or an anxious symptom, how can she move her family forward into wellness? It's impossible. When someone is under stress, they're unable to operate as their best self. And that's important that we think about that today as we move into our self-care strategies. Because 1 in 5 women face pregnancy-related or postpartum depression, anxiety, or other maternal mental health disorders. And for Black women, this is even more amplified, as Masha Riki mentioned. We can go to the next slide, please. That's me. I'm doing a yoga pose. So while we're on this picture of me, I just wanted to give you a little bit of backstory about how I got involved in AIM. I'm one of the co-leads of the San Gabriel Valley African American Infant and Maternal Mortality Community Planning Teams, and I'm a participant of the Community Action Team and Steering Committee. My passion for working with Black mamas in particular and their children came from my work in education. I have a PPS credential, and I was observing a lot of reports, and there's a lot of assessments that you have to do with a child who's been in special education for a long time. And generally, with the contracts that I had, the work that I was doing was having a lot of children who were in special education for multiple years. They had a lot of intervention education-wise, but once they went backwards into the child's history, a lot of what was showing up around kindergarten, first grade was it seemed to have some correlation to mother's pregnancy or first 0 to 5 years. And that really woke something up in my head, because I thought maybe instead of trying to address children after the trauma and the stress has occurred for a long term, how about we assist mothers to practice wellness? And so that's why I went on and got all my special credentials in yoga and breath work and sound healing, because I wanted to help mothers practice self-care. So that's the passion and motivation behind this. So let's move into the discussion. Next slide, please. So there are 8 dimensions of wellness, and the dimensions of wellness are ways in which mental health impacts all facets of health. Please go to the next slide. So one thing before we go into what those 8 dimensions are is I just have to say that you cannot feel well if you are constantly stressed out. And the goal of feeling well is not necessarily that you're not in pain, you're not suffering, and you're not crying and depressed every day. That's not feeling well. Feeling well is having balance and harmony between the 8 dimensions. So first, there's emotional and mental dimension. Now, this is our mindset. This is the way we handle and cope with our emotions and our feelings. So what happens to us when something is a huge transition that makes us feel uncomfortable? How do we manage those emotions? Are we reactive or are we responsive? The goal is responsive, so that you can take a moment in between something that occurs, the thought you have, and the action that you move forward with. And if you're unable to feel well in that area and you feel out of control, just something to think about. That's one of the areas of wellness. If that feels out of control, it probably doesn't feel like you have control of that dimension. Environmental, where you live, the people you're around, the space you're in, do you feel like you have a safe space to take time for yourself? Do you feel like you have a safe space to speak up about your truth, to talk about your interest, to talk about that you don't want somebody laying next to you or too close to you or too far? And this is actually about space and the way that you care for the environment around you and your home. Financial. We all know what this is. Poverty is a huge issue. If you have food insecurity, you have housing instability, how can you feel your optimal self if you are worried about whether you will have shelter or food the next day? And this is particularly important for mothers and fathers who are transitioning into being maybe new parents or parents of multiple children and they hadn't planned on it. What does that mean for them, and how does that affect their ability to feel well? Do they feel imbalanced because the resources are not necessarily there? Intellectual dimensions of wellness. So this is where you believe that you have the ability and the way you think about things in regards to your goals in life. So how do you think about the world? They call it emotional intelligence. How do you go about thinking, and how is your control of those thought processes? And this isn't just necessarily education. It's not about feeling well because you went to school. It's about feeling well because you feel able and you believe in yourself. Occupational is the career. Many of us are really worried about our careers, or we self-identify as what we do. For example, when we first meet someone, what do you do? As an identifier for whether or not they're valid at certain points. And for some people, the occupational dimension of wellness is their priority, and that's what they nurture a bit more than the other ones. And if that sounds like you, put a pin in it and just remember that. Physical dimension of wellness. What do you do for your body? How do you move your body? Are you breathing? What are you ingesting physically? What are you eating? What are you putting around your body? Are you getting too much sun, too little sun? Are you getting too much water, too little water? We're a little bit like beautiful plants. And if we don't water ourselves and sun ourselves and give ourselves all the wellness seeds and things we need, then we don't grow to be our best version, the most beautiful version of ourselves. Then there's a social dimension of wellness. That's who we're around and what we're speaking about and what we're listening to. For example, if you're on social media and you're reading, particularly in the world today, we have quite a few things that are impacting us as Black women. We have the George Floyd trial. We have what just happened to Dante Wright, I believe that's his name. And then we have other things happening with people walking in neighborhoods and getting assaulted by laypersons because they feel they can. And I think as a Black woman witnessing that, even though it's not happening to us, it feels like vicarious trauma. And it's important to know when we could turn those screens off It's important to know when we don't have to ingest everything. We should know enough to be aware so that we can make decisions and use the pause to move forward. But if it's impacting our ability to feel well, then it's important for us to recognize that maybe we're giving too much attention to that particular dimension. This is also people we're around and the conversations we're having with people. So if you're talking to somebody all the time about something that feels depressing or anxiety inducing to you, remember that you have a choice to change the conversation or talk to somebody else. And then finally is our spiritual dimension of wellness. This one is what I like to call faith, your energy. The universe is with you, whatever your faith is, to know and believe that it's got your back and it wants you to win. And also that there is routine around feeling good and grounding and feeling connected. Because I'm of a firm believer that we are all connected and we are all energy. And if we feel connected to others, we're more likely to treat others well and treat ourselves well because we are all connected. Next slide, please. So as I've been going through a little bit about the 8 dimensions of wellness, I want you to reflect. How have you seen these 8 dimensions of wellness manifested in your own lives? Think about it for a moment. And maybe if you'd like, you can put it in the chat. And I don't know if we have an opportunity for people to come up and talk to me. I don't think so. Another time, you'll find me. But maybe put it in the comments. What are some ways that you have seen these 8 dimensions of wellness manifested in your own lives? For example, maybe you give a bit too much attention to the occupational and you acknowledge that. Or perhaps you wish that you would do more in the physical and there's a lack of balance there. And maybe the lack of balance is in the financial because of the pandemic. It's been very devastating to many of us. Just noticing where you might have been out of balance in the past year. And what are some areas you might be neglecting? And what are you doing too much of? Just noticing and being aware. And, if you like these questions, I invite you to later after our hour is up, perhaps go and do a journal prompt using these questions for you to kind of just really take a moment to think about your routine and your self-love practice, because it's absolutely necessary in order to get through crisis situations. And this situation we are in right now is a crisis, especially if you are pregnant currently. There is a lot of fear. There's a lot of opportunity to follow thoughts that don't serve us about going into the hospital, about trusting doctors, about your children, because this is what's truly happening. In fact, if you are ingesting in the social realm of wellness, like we talked about, it might be hard to get out of that. So what are some ways you can practice wellness every day and bring balance to the 8 dimensions? All right, let's go on to the next slide. So how do you take care of yourself and balance those 8 dimensions of wellness? And I know we all know the things that people give us advice about. Eat well, exercise, sleep well. And then we get a lot of clients, because I specialize in anxiety and trauma, who are not sleeping at all and who have silly tummy where it's always moving and bouncing around because they're worried. Or they have headaches, gritting their teeth at night, not able to sleep. Sleeping too much. There are so many things that is happening to the body that is communicating with you. It's telling you something is not working. So consider the things in your environment that you can control. Sometimes the simple things have the biggest impact on your health. For example, it's not just eating well, it's eating what you enjoy. It's eating what your body likes. If you know that drinking milk makes you feel sick and gassy and bloated, then you would not do it. But some of us still do it. Some of us still eat ice cream, and some of us do those things that is not good for our body, and we're noticing it, but we still do it anyway. Sleep is another thing. If we notice that we are not getting to sleep and we are not observing what our routine is, what we're eating, what we're drinking, who we're around, whether we're watching TV, or listening to music that's overstimulating us before we go to bed. So that's why it's important to just notice what your routine is and how it's impacting you. Are you smoking and drinking? Are you maintaining your personal hygiene? So, there is no judgment here. In fact, there are some medical things that support anxiety and depression that people do smoke, like CBD. So I think it's important that you speak to your doctor about your self-care routine, and also just continue to track and getting aware of what your routine is. And if you don't have a routine at all, that's an issue. So think about it. Do you not have a routine? I always suggest if you don't have a routine, you can follow the moon cycles, because, you know, full moon and the new moon, it happens all the time that the moon has a cycle. So you can choose, maybe on a full moon, that's when you do new things, cleanse your space. And then on a new moon, that's when you decide to let go of bad habits. So you can create routine around lighting candles. You can do a lot of things that can help you utilize your own routine as a tool to bring self-awareness to what you intend to do in your life, and not just go through it mindlessly, because that's easy, especially when we have to work. And right now, some of us might be our kids' teachers. So some of these things you're like, Nakeya, what are you talking about? I don't know. You know, I don't know if I can get diet, exercise, sleep, and maintain myself and organize my space and create a routine. That sounds like a lot. But you can, because you love yourself and you have to. Let's move on to the next slide. So let's identify some signs of anxiety. Because the thing is, maybe some of us are feeling anxiety and we don't know that it's anxiety and we're ignoring it. And that's damaging to the body. In fact, the toxic stress that we talked about earlier that impacts Black births and impacts our children is literally the fact that we are ignoring the signs of our mental health disorders. And everybody at times feels mentally ill. Just like at times we feel physically healthy, sometimes we feel physically ill. And it's uncomfortable to me as a licensed clinical social worker that people don't acknowledge that mental health is very normal and natural. Just as sometimes you get a stomach ache, sometimes you feel down. And it's not this huge thing that you are immediately have some kind of extreme disorder unless it happens consistently. And that's why you need to know patterns. And that's why it's important also to possibly get a therapist or a safe space, like a group, so that you can truly explore what's going on with you. So here are some signs. Worry or fear excessively, like thoughts that keep repeating that are worrying about a specific thing. Like, I'm going to be late in the morning, and you have that specific thought all day the day before, and then you don't even sleep because you've been thinking that particular thought. We usually call that perseveration. So if you're having those types of thoughts, being aware that you have them, identifying and knowing the frequency of it, so that when you do go talk to a therapist about what's going on with you, you'll be able to communicate about it, and they'll be able to help you develop a different routine, a different way of thinking, maybe engage in some cognitive behavioral therapy to help you shift a routine. If you have stomach and digestive problems, memory problems, increased heart rate, a lot of people end up in the hospital at the ER with a panic attack, feeling like thinking they were gonna die. I've heard that a lot with my clients, and they usually refer to me after that because we do specialize in helping people with the somatic symptoms. And what helps with that is breathing, because you have to convince your body, which is protecting you, that you are not in danger. So when it comes with you where you're having decreased energy, stomach digestive problems, and increased heart rate, that's generally a sign of anxiety, especially when they come together. And a lot of times that's the beginning of a panic attack. Also sleeping issues, irritability and restlessness, and rage. Rage is a big one for anxiety. When you feel threatened and out of control, at times you start yelling and being very irritable with others. This is particularly something that happens in parenting, the yelling and the snapping at the kids, because they are not as in control as you wish them to be in the moment, because that's about you. And being able to notice that you're feeling anxiety helps you forgive yourself, because it's just that you were feeling anxious. It's not because you were a bad mom. Next slide, please. Identifying signs of depression. So it's, depression sometimes can look like anxiety. Sometimes people can have symptoms of both, and it doesn't mean that you have some extreme disorder. It just means that at a certain time you might feel anxious, and at a certain time you might feel depressive. They are just symptoms. They are not labels. These are not intended to give you a label. This is intended to help you identify what you are feeling so that you can know when you need to get help. So depression is feelings of hopelessness, feeling like there is no future, can't imagine what it would look like, your road ahead, feeling like you're just overeating or over drinking to cope, having trouble having memory, feeling a very slow, lazy heart rate, unable to move, When you do move your body faster, it feels like you're unable and it feels uncomfortable, like then you're gonna pass out. And that's when it feels like a panic attack. Sleeping too much, again, the irritability, rage, sadness, tiredness. Rage also comes in depression. When you just want to be left alone and you don't want to be stimulated, you feel rageful, or you feel so hopeless that the anger comes in as a part of grieving, that you no longer have hope. And it's important for you to notice these things about yourself so that you can get help, talk to somebody. If you don't have the energy, because as you notice, inconsistent energy levels, you don't have the energy to even pick up the phone to find a therapist, please do know that you can ask for help. There are so many resources available, including our organization, AIM organization. We have so many partners out there who are really trying to be there for you mommies. So know that you're not alone. Next slide. So here's some helpful tips. Like we mentioned, ask for a support partner. Get sufficient sleep. Like I see Shanja in the chat said that getting in 7 hours of sleep has changed her life. It's super important. Try not to eat after 7 p.m. and try not to really engage your brain in too much activity that's not of the purpose of what you want to happen in the morning. Because I don't know if you guys know this, but your brain is still awake even though you go to sleep. It's still thinking and moving. So I always recommend that possibly just before bed, no TV, no reading, because you're taking those stories with you, especially if it's like an hour or two just before you go to bed, you're taking those stories with you into your sleep and you might be thinking about it. So for example, the social media example we utilized last time, maybe you're watching that news right before you go to bed. That might help assist in having nightmares that don't serve you. So perhaps write down in your journal exactly what you want to dream about and what you want to do in the morning. I want to wake up at 8 a.m. and I want to feel in a good mood. Manifest and expect behaviors and responses from yourself by training yourself and giving yourself the language, practicing always to do what you want to do is a good habit. Because if you identify and address the bad habits and you just let them keep going, that means you're okay with them. Okay, so really do remember that self-awareness is key, and then taking action to integrate the routine that you've developed is what's going to give you your superpower, your energy to fuel forward and be happy and have a routine of self-care. Also, there's limiting screen time. Like I said, turning off screens at least 1 hour before sleeping. There's meditation apps. I don't know if you guys know, but Headspace is now on Netflix. And so they have all these amazing tools available for you to start trying to practice. And meditation isn't necessarily letting go of all the thoughts. Meditation is just truly being present with yourself and noticing what's happening. Oh, I'm hot right now. I'm breathing in and I'm taking a deep breath. Oh, I'm feeling better. I'm starting to calm down. My headache is going away. I'm breathing. That's a form of meditation, just noticing yourself. And maybe you're noticing looking around the room. We always say, look at 5 things you could touch, 5 things you could smell, things you could hear, just noticing and breathing. And that'll help you practice your first mindfulness if you're new to this. Also yoga and walking and doing dishes and even reading sometimes can be meditative depending on what you're ingesting. And just work on creating that routine and practicing breathing techniques. And by the way, at the end, I'm going to do some breathing techniques with you. Next slide, please. All right, so as we've been mentioning, the body does keep score. In fact, I'm so glad the body keeps score because it's the data of Black women as they're giving birth and our children that is truly helping this movement forward in equity in healthcare for Black women and babies, or at least getting us to talk about it. For example, we have a whole Black Maternal Health Week, and I think it's important to acknowledge that the body is one of the reasons why we do have this kind of week. It remembers all the physical and emotional trauma. Next slide, please. And maybe you know or you don't know, but I love to talk about the nervous system. So we have a parasympathetic and a sympathetic response when it comes to stress. What we'd like to be in is the parasympathetic system. That's where we're calm, our body is able to think and take pause. Our gut is active, our digestion is doing what it's supposed to do. Our pupils are shrinking, our blood is going slower. We feel a slower heartbeat. Boom, boom, boom. We're able to conserve our energy and breathe. Right? We're doing the good things. Then in the sympathetic system, that's when we have the quickened heartbeat, fast and shallow breath. Blood is rushing. We could feel it in our ears. I don't know if anybody can remember times when they've been stressed and you could feel it in your ears and you can feel it in your head, and you can actually sometimes feel like there's a drumming happening, maybe in the front of your forehead, maybe the top of your head, maybe behind your ears. Maybe you feel it right here and it feels like it's going really fast. You're feeling a hormonal rush. Maybe you feel out of control. You feel very much like screaming or just releasing, and you have so much pent up energy. That's for a reason. When we are in the sympathetic system, we are meant to be in our fight or flight response, or some people say there's fawn. But this is where your body is truly getting ready to escape the dinosaur that is coming after us. And so it's like, let's get going, let's keep it moving, let's survive. And often when people have experienced long-term chronic complex stress called complex trauma, or even intergenerational trauma, which is what we as Black women have experienced. If we are Black and we have ancestors who were enslaved, it is within our ancestry and our DNA that we have a stress response that we are used to. And then as we live in this world every day, there are stress responses about sending our children to school, or letting our family members drive, or going out in public in general, taking walks and going on runs and having air freshener in our windows. So I think it's true. I think it's fair to say that many of us tend to live in the sympathetic system on a regular basis, whether we realize it or not. And once you realize that you are in your sympathetic stress response, it's important for you to notice and bring yourself back, because it's impossible for the body to continue to stay in the sympathetic system stress response for long periods of time. Because what will happen is it breaks down the body. Let's go to the next slide. This is what happens. Headaches and issues with cognitive function. You can't think clearly. How can you make your best decisions if you're stressed out and you have a headache and you haven't slept for days and you don't eat well and your stomach hurts and you're stressed out about something? You don't have healthy relationships because you don't treat yourself well. So all these things are running around. Digestive disorders, immune system disorders, lupus is coming up, connective tissue disorders, all these things, weight gain, obesity, decreased sex drive, inability to start relationships, all related to constantly being in that sympathetic space. And I ask you this, do you know how to get yourself into the parasympathetic space? Just think about it for a minute, because I'm gonna tell you. Go to the next slide, please. So right here, I mentioned what is it that can bring us to the parasympathetic space, which is where we want to go. Self-care is what does it. Self-care, and especially breathing. So breathing is our absolute superpower. We come into this world with ourselves. Who's the only person you can't get rid of? Yourself. So if you can't get rid of yourself, and you're always in partnership with this body and this breath, and you came into this world with the ability to breathe, the very first thing a baby has to do is let out that cry and be present and be free in the world. And we have to remember that we are still those babies. We just grew up, and we still need to breathe in order to calm ourselves down. We need to take deep belly breaths, and we need to be able to convince our body that we are safe. We need to be able to convince our mind and our spirit that we are safe. And I ask this question, how do we as Black women, Black mothers in a pandemic and a civil rights uprising find safe spaces? We must have community, and we must have our own internal, intrinsic motivation for self-love and self-care when we need it most. And when we need it most is when we are dysregulated and in our sympathetic space. So what is your self-care routine? Just think about it right now. And how are you cultivating self-awareness? What are you doing in your life to be your best self? And what are you doing in your life to help you breathe and calm down when somebody make you want to pop off? And I use that language because it's real, it's my truth. And sometimes I don't want to engage with others, even when I have to. Yes, isolate and meditate. And sometimes work requires me to engage in ways that take a lot of me. So what is the choice that we have? What is your self-care routine? Just think about it. You don't have to tell me. You can put it in the comments if you want. Or if you have a journal around or a piece of paper around, just maybe jot that down for yourself. If you don't have one, what would you like your self-care routine to look like? What could it look like? And if you don't have any idea of what your self-care routine could be, please also note that and make an effort to reach out to me, Masha Riki, somebody from the library, somebody from AIM, March of Dimes, Therapeutic Play Foundation. Please reach out to us so that we can be your allies in your self-care and your self-love, because that's what's going to help you be the healthiest version of you for yourself and for your children and for your family. Next slide, please. So now we are into our practical experiential portion. So because I don't see you, which is kind of cool, you know, I could just be fully in it. I hope that you have really had the opportunity to hear some of the things that I was saying about the science of it and how you absolutely do have control over this body that you are living in, this body that's your partner in life, and this body that holds this most amazing and powerful womb that can birth children and bring them into the world. And we're like amazing aliens. And we have these special powers to give life, and we have these special powers to be able to love others. But first, we have to practice loving ourselves, and that starts with regulation. And breathing is the first step in regulation. It is something that you can do always when you're by yourself, when you're with other people. You don't have to explain that you are breathing. You don't have to explain to others a way that you need a moment. You can just do, because it is your right and you are able to do so. And I just want to expose you to, we have about, perfect timing. I think we have about 15 more minutes, and then we might have a Q&A towards the end. But I just want to take the opportunity, if you are not comfortable, maybe lay yourself down or get yourself into an easy seated position, which I like to tell kids, you know, it's crisscross applesauce, where you sit down on your bottom and you put your legs one over on top of each other and just get comfortable. Or you could lay down on your bed. You could lay down on the floor. I'd recommend the floor, laying down flat on your back, connecting completely with the earth, and just trying to be present in this moment. Laying down also gives you a great opportunity to take full, deep breaths and feel connected to the earth and feel connected to the air above you as well. So, you know, either option, easy seated or laying down. The most important requirement is that your whole body, let me show you, that your whole base from your belly, your diaphragm, up to your chest and your throat is in alignment and straight, so that you can take deep belly breaths. And what I hope that you maybe want to do is place one hand or both hands on your belly, maybe one hand on your heart. If you want to feel grounded, maybe one hand on the lower belly, and just practice with me for a moment, just taking a regular breath. And let it out through the mouth. And you should hopefully have noticed that your belly rose just a little. Just kind of be with me for a moment, just breathing in and out, starting regular breaths before we get into our alternate nostril breathing. That'll be our first practice. But for now, we're just arriving into the room, breathing in and out, arriving into this moment. You can do it. This is your first time practicing with me. And if you have a practice, this is my trusty singing bowl. I hope you can hear it. Just breathing in and out. Trying to be present here, letting go of the thoughts of everything else, what happened before you came here with me today, what happened yesterday, the news you watched, the things that stress you out. Just let it go right now for this moment, and practice breathing, practice being present, breathing in and out. In and out. So our first technique is alternate nostril breathing. And this is something that you can engage in when you're feeling particularly stressed out. It's something that also brings energy. It's kind of like associated with fire, just because it can get you a bit lightheaded. If you have a cold or you have mucus or there's something going on with your sinuses, I would recommend that you don't do this activity because I don't want you to get breathless and not really feel well. If you have a migraine right now, maybe don't do it so aggressively. Maybe take slow, deeper breaths. Just noticing for yourself whether you're actually liking this or not. But this is a great technique if you are feeling like you're having a panic attack or you feel really dysregulated, like maybe your body feels like it's shaky inside and you can't focus or bring your attention back to yourself and back to your body, and you can't slow your breath. It's getting out of control. This is a good technique to use because it takes so much focus to actually do it that by the time you have been practicing doing this, you have calmed down. And you've also been fostering some of that fire energy so that you can feel some power in your breath. Okay, so take your hand, 5 fingers, and let's use our thumb and our forefinger. We're gonna use it on our nose. We're gonna just keep alternating. That's why it's called alternate nostril breathing. And so what we'll do is, kind of just hold the thumb next to your, let's say our right nostril, and then leaving the forefinger free, or we can actually, forefinger, or you can use the middle finger, whatever feels good to you. There's no rules. You're in charge of your own body. Do whatever works for you to close the nostrils, okay? So on an inhale, you're gonna close the right nostril. Close the right nostril, leaving the rest of the fingers free. Close your lips and inhale through the left nostril. Okay, let's do it together. Hold it at the top, and then close the other nostril and let it out. Wait, I think I went to the same one. Yeah, switch. Now come up the one you just let it out. So you're switching breath in and out each nostril. You might hear the nice little sound of the nostril. Don't worry, you're by yourself or you're in your house with safe people. Now back up through the same nostril. Other nostril. Taking your time. And switch. Do this on your own. Taking your time. Just noticing how it makes your body feel. We look all a little funny. So fun though. Take about 3 to 5 more breaths on your own. Wherever you are, alternate 1 or 2 more times. And then coming back to stillness. And just noticing how you feel after you did that kind of aggressive breathing that took practice and notice. What nose was I covering? Which finger am I using? Just noticing how that felt. Breathing in your body. Coming back to regular breath, in and out. Trying to feel the belly rise, the breath go up through the belly, the diaphragm, into the chest, into the throat, and maybe out the nose with the lips sealed. And maybe the next time, out the mouth with the And if this feels uncomfortable, that's okay. It means you don't have a practice. We will start practicing now because we know how important it is for your health and for the regulation of your nervous system. This is the first line of defense. Breathing is your power. And imagine if you knew all the techniques that worked for you, that you were in charge of your body and you knew what to do to it for it in order to feel its most well self, its most happy self. Breathing is the start. Breathing allows us to make good decisions. Breathing allows us to have good thoughts and choose the thoughts that we want. I hope you all know that thoughts are not in control. Thoughts are just thoughts. We have them, and usually they come from stories we've heard, things we've seen, and we don't have to believe them just because we have the thoughts. And breath is the superpower that helps us notice that there is the pause, that there is ability to just breathe and notice. I'm experiencing this right now. It sucks. I don't like it. I don't like them. I don't want to be around them. Breathe. I will remove myself. This is not serving me. Breathe. I will speak up for myself when I am able, when I am less dysregulated and less upset. Breathe. I will make decisions that serve me. Breathe. Now, alternate nostril breathing is kind of a difficult one to do in public because people are like, what you doing? you hear all that snot in there and stuff. It's kind of funny, but it is. I hope you guys felt good with it. Now, this next breathing technique is called box breath, and it's also called 4-4-4 breathing. And I think this one's a little bit easier to do in public, and I think this is also the one that's more calming, whereas alternate nostril breathing is kind of like a shock to the anxiety or to the panic. I think box breathing is more like, I have this moment. I can take this moment. So what it is get in a comfortable position. So if you're still where you were, maybe you were easy seated pose, or maybe you were laying flat down on your back, whatever you're doing, get comfortable because we're going to be here for a moment. We're actually going to be here for maybe 5 to 10 box breaths. And box breath is a count of 4. So you're going to inhale for a count of 4. Hold the inhale at the top of your throat for a count of 4. And then you're going to release the breath for a count of 4. And it may sound pretty weird, or it might feel weird, especially if you don't normally have practice of breath, to do this 4 count. But it's the basic count. And if it's too difficult to do 4, you can condense it down to 2. You can do inhale for 1, 2, hold 1, 2, exhale 1, 2. And since you're on your own and you're in control of you, you have that choice. I can't see you and no one else can. So just do your best and know that this is a great tool for you to use when you're feeling stressed out, before a test, before some big interview, before a Zoom meeting, before you're learning something. Breath is important because it helps you to learn. It helps you to keep what you learned in your brain. It makes your brain think that you're able. And also the brain is one of the most plastic, able to heal and recover organs in our whole body. So breath is how we do that recovery and healing. And so with a practice, and box breath might be your practice, you'll be healing your brain, even if you've been experiencing chronic stress or trauma, or even that intergenerational trauma we talked about. This breath will do some work to help heal all that stuff that's in there. In our body, in our brain. This is the first step. And then with practice, we continue to heal more and more so that we can be our best selves, okay? So if we're in our comfortable position, let's go for it. Getting ready, arriving into this moment, choosing to actually do the box breath. Don't go to the bathroom, don't leave the room. Practice this because you deserve it and you love yourself enough to do so. Choose you. Breathing in regularly, feeling the belly rise. And when you're ready, start to do it to your own count. I'll help you out. Breathing in for 1, 2, 3, 4. Holding it at the top for 1, 2, 3, 4. And release through the mouth for 1, 2, 3, 4. Start again. Inhale, 1, 2, if you're 1, 2. Hold for 1, 2. And release, 1, 2. Inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold the breath at the top. 1, 2, 3, 4, and release. 2, 3, 4. Again. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. 1, 2, 3, 4. Release. 1, 2, 3, 4. Inhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold it at the top. 1, 2, 3, 4. Release. 1, 2, 3, 4. Inhale. 1, 2. Hold. 1, 2. Exhale. 1, 2. Inhale. 1, 2. Hold. Exhale. Inhale. Hold. Exhale. Inhale. Hold. Exhale. Inhale. Hold. Exhale. Almost done. You guys are doing a great job. You got this. Now as you breathe, start to think about your mantra. What it is that you want for yourself, for your love, for your family. Just breathing regularly now. Letting go of the box. Letting go of the breath. Just being present, allowing your body to come to a normal inhale and exhale. Remembering your mantra. Allowing your body to settle. I am here. I am breathing. I am safe. Maybe start to wiggle your fingers and your toes, and maybe do a little head roll. Maybe a shoulder shrug. And just notice what your body feels like if you practice in that breath. And I thank you so much for sharing energy with me and breath and being in connection with me as a fellow mommy. I too have experienced my own bouts of anxiety and a very traumatic birth. And I have a young 8-year-old Black male who's giant. And so I move in this life with some anxiety, and breath work is how I make it through. So please know that these strategies truly do work. And I'm so happy to have had this opportunity to work with you. And I think up next is Masha Riki. We might have a Q&A section. Oh, Masha Riki, I think you're muted.
Thank you. Thank you so much for not only the background, because I think sometimes when we think about self-care and wellness, we don't understand the background of how, what stress does to our body. So that was really helpful for me. And to have these tips that are easy to do at home and out in public too. So one question I have is, what can folks do, or audience participants do? Because I think and you talked about being on a cycle, and what can we do to, I think, just what I struggle with is like, oh, I get off that cycle, right? I start a routine and then I get off of it, and to just get myself back into it and get and to kind of reduce some of the like being hard on ourselves because we, aren't sticking to our exercise routine. So what are some suggestions that you have to just like, get back on our routine if we fall off?
I think it's just important to love yourself, and whatever that looks like is what the routine should be. It shouldn't be somebody else's routine. It has to be your routine. So if you're falling off, it's my opinion that perhaps that routine is not yours. It didn't serve you. Because if it served you, then it will be something that you would make effort because you truly enjoy it. For example, I'm such a yogi because for me, it healed me. I've had lots of health issues that yoga and breath, I truly have seen how it improved my well-being. So I love it. Like I'm addicted to the feeling of it, right? So I'm like, I must have it. And particularly restorative yoga, I'm not even talking about the asana, which is like doing the downward dog and all the flexibility. I'm more so talking about the yoga of rest, which is something I don't do. I'm a very productive person. I own multiple businesses. I have a child. I'm a single mother. I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And I think having a place where I truly, for 90 minutes, usually restorative classes are fairly long, I don't have to think, I don't have to plan something, I don't have to be somebody's mommy or boss or cook dinner or clean that up. I just have to breathe for this hour. And there's something that's very validating about that. So whatever that is for you. So restorative might not be for you, but maybe it is washing dishes. Maybe it's walking. Maybe it's painting. Maybe it's journaling. Maybe it's paint by numbers, or it's gardening. It's like creating little stones for your garden outside. It's doing your nails. It's braiding hair. You see what I'm saying? It's truly what your routine is. And I think sometimes even advocacy is a form of self-care because we feel powerful. So like even our work with AIM, Masha, Riki, I think that's a form of self-care. Like I don't feel like it's me being productive going to those meetings. I feel like it's me feeling powerful because I felt powerlessness in situations as a new mother. So now I'm trying to change that narrative for myself. So I'm back in my routine, right? Because I'm taking power. So just keep that mindset. It's not what you do, it's who you are to yourself.
And I love your example of advocacy, and I think especially ties into Black Maternal Health Week, because really this week is about advocacy and uplifting and change, right? And knowing, and along with the theme of this year, claiming our power, liberation, and freedom, right? So really, what are we doing to do that? Claiming our power, liberation, and freedom for our Black moms and babies. So I love that connection. Thank you. We have one question. And it says, I began my journey as a motherhood as a teenager, and as a new mother, how would you determine if memory issues are related to anxiety, depression, or simply what society calls pregnancy loss? Or is that a thing?
Well, I totally think it's a thing. I think we still say we have mom brain, like even like way long after we're forever impacted. But I think it's a thing because our body's not getting the resources it needs. So we know that when we're pregnant, that we are truly giving most of our resources, including what we eat, to our baby. And then afterwards, we had so much hormones and so much inside of us that then we're shedding, and we're literally shedding hair. And I think the body, because so much transition is happening, that nervous system, that immune system, the organs are literally shifting. So imagine, you remember what I talked about earlier, the sympathetic versus the parasympathetic response. I imagine that we would mostly be in our sympathetic response right after birth. Like some of us are still bleeding, and we're still got all kind of stitches and all kind of things that it's healing. So I want us to think, if all of our resources that we have, including our brain, our organs, our blood, our breath, is focused on someone else, a whole nother being outside of us, and we sometimes aren't even taking full deep breaths, brain fog comes. So I think it's a part of both. If you don't breathe and you don't sleep, you're gonna have symptoms of anxiety and depression. It's not because you have anxiety and depression, you're just going to feel all those symptoms because your body is not at its optimal space.
Thank you for that. And I really appreciate the tip about turning off your cell phone, watching the news. I mean, so much of what's happening in the news and the anxiety that it's giving us, and really kind of like monitoring that. So I really appreciate that as well. We are wrapping up. Do you have one final last words for us as we send people off into the weekend for self-care? Any final words of wisdom?
Yeah. Oh, I like that you think I'm wise. What a nice No, I think my final word would be just, self-love as a form of connection is super important. So cultivate safe spaces with others, particularly other Black mamas, other Black women, other people who have experiences similar to yours, because that's where healing begins. I think what's missing a lot in the Black community is group esteem, and it's been intentional. And a lot of times we have a lot of self-esteem individually, but we don't trust others. And I think it's important that we move forward with this energy of trust, because we do need a village, particularly for our kids. Our kids need that village, and we have to be the one to model that. So when it comes to self-care routine, if it's hard for you to do it on your own, really do find connection.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And thanks for the reminder. And thank you for the LA Public Library for creating this program within this space for us to share the self-care and empowerment. And please join us on Monday for our event with Kim Sills-Ehlers. And as Chandra said, there's a whole list of resources on the library page. So I invite you to join the library, find the resources on the library page, find out more about the LA African American Infant and Maternal Mortality Prevention Initiative, AIM, at blackinfantsandfamilies.org. And also you can find more resources on self-care and tips and tools and advocacy on the marchadimes.org. So thank you so much for joining us today. Be well and take care.